Fatih Birol, the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, on the consequences on EU energy policy 1 year after Russia's invasion and war of aggression against Ukraine. I would like to welcome the two distinguished guests and of course with this it is important to look what was achieved and how we took the necessary measures and very good measures in order to counterattack the actions, direct actions of Russia and of course the indirect consequences of the aggression against Ukraine, but also to look in the future, because unfortunately the war is not over yet. Some will fear of some escalation, and it's important in this context we need to respond with urgency to the several challenges still in terms of security of supply, maybe the high energy prices, infrastructure bottlenecks, and of course to look to the geopolitical context, which was changed a lot, and what we expect in the coming months and maybe years in the field of energy policy. That's why I'm really grateful to Commissioner Simson and Executive Director Birol for having accepted our invitation to frame this discussion, giving their insight and extraordinary expertise and of course have this exchange of views with us. We have first the introductory remarks of the two guests, then a first round of political group coordinators or representatives, then the replies, the feedback from them, and then the second round we have already a number of speakers. So please, colleagues, respect the time. Immediately after this we'll have also a press conference. I will have a press conference together with the Commissioner and Executive Director. By saying that, I go directly to Commissioner Simson for her introductory remarks. Please, and thank you once again for being here.
Dear Christian, dear Fatih, honourable members, good morning. And I'm grateful for Christian and ITRE committee for organising this debate to mark the 1 year anniversary of the Repower EU strategy. It is very timely. The Russian war against Ukraine has caused a tremendous shift in Europe's energy system. In 1 year, the transformation triggered by the war and by Repower EU has been unprecedented. In a moment, I will talk about how far we have come in delivering the Repower EU agenda and about what lies ahead. But first, I want to look at what this dramatic year has meant for Ukraine and its energy system. 12 months ago, Ukraine was the main gas transit route towards the European Union, 40 BCM a year, based on the trilateral agreement concluded in 2019. It had a large power sector synchronized with Russian and the Brel system, even if plans for synchronization with the European grid were in the making. Ukraine hosted 4 nuclear power plants, including the largest in Europe, and was committed to work on improving safety with the help of the Union. It was reforming and modernizing its energy regulatory framework. So fast forward 1 year. Since October, Ukraine's power sector has been under constant Russian missile and drone attacks. The latest took place this night. Ukrainians have endured constant sacrifices. Europe's largest nuclear power station in Zaporozhye is occupied by military forces in violation of all international conventions with great risks for nuclear incidents. Technicians, engineers and nuclear experts are risking their lives every day and this very moment to repair and replace damaged infrastructure. Disruption on this scale could have brought any energy system into its knees, but Ukraine has not given up. It has resisted the invasion, and Europe has stood by Ukraine every step of the way. We were able to synchronize the Ukrainian and Moldovan electricity network in the pace of 3 weeks instead of 2 years, as previously planned. And we introduced a strong set of sanctions against Russia, including the oil and coal. We delivered 1,600 generators and 1,400 transformers to Ukraine, and I set up a dedicated fund with the energy community, which today totals 180 million euros in pledges. As we go forward, we will continue to support Ukraine. Currently, we are working to promote decentralized production of electricity with off-grid solar panels, and last Friday I welcomed the offer by Enel to provide Ukraine panels produced in Europe. And this is just the beginning, and I invite all member states and companies to join this initiative and scale up. And I'm also working with ENTSO-E to make sure that electricity trade volumes can be progressively increased for both imports and exports. We have integrated Ukraine in the gas joint purchasing platform with a view to help secure 2 billion cubic meters of additional gas. And we are working on market reforms in the context of the accession process. And I continue engaging with the IAEA to insist that the occupation of Zaporozhye nuclear power plant is a crime and a danger to all, and every effort should be made to create a secure zone. Honourable members of the European Parliament, I wanted to start my remarks with Ukraine because this is not a side story. It's at the heart of our repower actions. The invasion of Ukraine was preceded by manipulation by Russia of our gas markets. To destabilise the Union and create uncertainty, gas supplies have been used to leverage blackmail and divide member states, to weaken the resolve to oppose an unjust and illegal war. And such actions made it crystal clear that the Union should put an end to a massive dependency we had on Russia, built over decades. And this is exactly what we have set out to do with the Repower EU agenda. Many doubted that was it even possible, but 1 year on, the shift in the European energy system is spectacular. Let's take gas diversification as an example. Since September 2022, Russian gas is about 8% of all pipeline gas imported to EU. Pipeline gas imports from Russia amounted 61 billion cubic meters last year. The first gas supplier to Europe is no longer Russia, it is Norway. Some doubted that Europe would ever be able to receive the LNG that was needed to replace Russian gas, due to the limitations in the physical capacity of LNG terminals, but facts tell a different story. In less than 1 year, 3 new terminals were opened, and 5 more will be opened by the end of this year for a total capacity of 50 BCM. And in 2022, we received in total 135 billion cubic meters of LNG from the global market. From the United States, for instance, we received 56.4. This is 34 billion cubic meters more than in previous years. The increase of gas supplies from other sources than Russia was almost 10% higher than they estimated in the March Repower EU communication. And overall, the EU phased out Russian gas by 2/3. We backed up this diversification effort with new tools. We have introduced a common storage policy in 3 months, thanks to the work of this committee and its rapporteur, Professor Buzek. And this has worked well. We filled storage up to 95% by November last year, and it's still around 57%. This is more than twice the level of our underground gas storage last year. And we have introduced a framework for a coordinated gas demand reduction. All member states committed to reduce their consumption by at least 15%, and they did so. Demand dropped by more than 19% between August and January, and this helped us to save 42 billion cubic meters of gas. We have set up an energy platform to support diversification and joint purchasing, and we have introduced a mechanism to correct price peaks in the TTF gas market, not justified by the fundamentals of global markets, and we will propose to extend MCM to all other hubs. And we did all that without derailing the Green Deal. Last year, carbon emissions dropped in Europe by 2.5%. An important part of Repower EU was to boost renewables deployment to replace gas in power generation and heating, and this has matched expectations and possibly exceeded them. Last year, we generated more electricity from wind and solar than from gas. So 2022 was a record year for solar energy in the EU, with 41 gigawatts of new capacity installed, and wind capacity also rose by 15 gigawatts. So last year, 39% of our electricity came from renewables. And this wide-ranging change happened not just because of top-down instructions from governments. It was a grassroots movement with Europeans leading the change. They have installed millions of solar PVs on the roofs. They are putting heat pumps in their homes, and they have adjusted their lifestyles. This was sadly driven by high energy prices, but not only. Everyone has played their part. That is where we stand today, but the value of our discussion is not in looking back, it lies in looking forward to the next steps. So let me conclude by making 3 remarks on the future. First, on the outlook for the next heating season. We are in a good position to end this winter without any shortage and to start the next refilling season with confidence and half-full storage. But as Dr. Birol will explain in a moment, we should be under no illusion that things are getting easy. This year will be challenging, and the year after that as well. Many uncertainties remain, and we need to keep a healthy and prudent supply-demand balance. I am going to propose to Member States to prolong the voluntary demand reduction by 15% until next year. This has worked well, and it's the best guarantee to achieve an adequate level of storage by November. We will continue and extend our efforts at diversification around the world and to ensure reliable supplies to Europe. Second, we received last year around 20 billion cubic meters of Russian LNG. I think that we can and should get rid of Russian LNG completely as soon as possible, still keeping in mind our security of supply. And I encourage all member states and all companies to stop buying Russian LNG and not to sign any new gas contracts with Russia once the existing contracts have expired. Committing not to renew existing contracts with Russia is the best way to give a long-term assurance to our reliable partners that meaningful demand will stay. Third, in my view, Europe will win this energy war when we finally deliver on our renewable energy objectives. For me, the end goal of REPowerEU is not to replace one unreliable source of gas with another trusted source of natural gas. It is to leverage Europe's energy independence by massively increasing renewables. We need to accelerate our installation rate to be bolder on renewables. And to that end, we need to take 5 steps this year. First, the dialogue on the RED III must be finalised as soon as possible. I welcome the progress that we have had so far, but we need an agreement on ambitious targets and a robust enabling framework by the end of March. Second, we need to use all the potential, in particular on biomethane and heat pumps. And I will launch a practical initiative to promote biomethane by the end of this year. And you can also expect from our side that we will present a strategy on heat pumps. And third, we need to accelerate the construction of large-scale offshore projects. We have 2 summits this year, one in Ostend, another in Lithuania, and we will need to make progress. Fourth, there is a need to look at grid developments to remove a serious bottleneck, and I'm advocating to include grid manufacturing in our Net Zero Industrial Act that will be presented next week. And finally, I will prioritise incentivising renewables in the reform of the electricity market design. We need a reform that will help bring down prices and protect consumers, but also that strengthen incentives for new investments in renewables. Honourable members, 1 year ago, many would have said that ending our dependency from Russia is mission impossible. And look at where we are now. This is thanks to our unity and also the work of this committee. Let me thank in particular you, Chairperson. You have been a great interlocutor, even when we had these difficult choices with Article 122 proposals. And we have come a long way, but we still have a tough job ahead of us. So I offer all my cooperation to you, but only together we will be able to deliver the necessary missing pieces in our legislation this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Commissioner. Thank you for all your involvement. Congratulations for everything it was achieved. Thank you for coming so often to ITRE committee to discuss, to take the input from our colleagues, the good ideas that contributed also to the decisions that were taken, and of course, thank you to the whole team from DGNR and everyone that you coordinated for the good dialogue during this year of crisis. And of course, we are looking forward to work very closely together in the future. We have a very important privilege to have here with us today the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, Dr. Fatih Birol, extremely knowledgeable, with a very strong voice during this year of crisis, of war, but not only, of course, even before, with the most important challenges that the international energy sector, but also European energy sector faced, and with a lot of very interesting solutions that I'm looking on the website of International Energy Agency. Please, Mr. Birol, you have the floor now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Buzek, Madam Commissioner, dear members of the Parliament. It's a great privilege for the International Energy Agency to share our views about the European energy situation of today and also tomorrow. Dear colleagues, 24th of February was a major milestone in the history of energy, not only for Europe, but for the entire world. Because Russia, the country that invaded Ukraine, is not any country when it comes to energy. As of 24th of February, Russia was the #1 energy exporter of the world. #1 in oil, top oil exporter, #1 in natural gas, major player in the coal markets, in electricity markets and beyond. So therefore, it triggered the first global energy crisis with implications for everybody in the world. But of course, Europe was at the epicenter of this crisis. So today, in the next few minutes, dear colleagues, I would like to talk under 3 headlines. One is a congratulations. Second is a warning. And third is indicating an opportunity for Europe. First, now, many people thought, as of 24th of February, and there was a lot of wishful thinking from Kremlin and elsewhere, that Europe, as a result of resisting against Russia, together with Ukraine and the international community, would mean, in quote, Europe would freeze and Europe would have major economic damage. But European countries and the Commission moved in solidarity, in a pragmatic way, and took very urgent and right decisions. And the International Energy Agency, only 1 week after the invasion, on 1st of March, came up with a 10-point plan which we have suggested to European governments. And today, I would like to show you why I think it is time, after 1 year, to congratulate European Union and the institutions. At the IEA, we are a number-driven organization. We make our hands dirty with data every day. So just with the numbers, I want to show you why it is time today, after 1 year, to congratulate Europe and European institutions. Number one, we have seen that in 1 year of time, Russian oil and gas revenues, a major input for the Russian budget, declined by a major 40%. This is, in my view, a major help to Ukraine's defense. And our analysis show that this decline will only deepen in the next months to come. The second indicator, the share of Russian gas in Europe, in a very short period of time, 1 year is very short for the energy sector, in a very short period of time, declined substantially. Another good indicator, renewables. A huge increase in renewable energies, mainly driven by solar, but also wind and the others, huge increase about 40%. This is driven by also by the fact that many countries see renewable energies not only a solution to our climate problems, but also a solution to our energy security problems. Energy security was a key driver of the big renewables growth. Heat pumps, again a big growth. Poland is the leader, but in Finland, in the rest of Europe, we have seen huge growth in heat pumps to reduce the gas consumption. We work very closely with the manufacturers of heat pumps around the world. In Europe, they were always complaining in the past that they don't have enough work to do. Now they are still complaining because they are not able to meet the demand coming from their customers. Electric cars, also a big growth. So all clean energy options increased while the gas decreased. And many people thought and said, Europe has double standards. Europe tells the world that we have to reduce the emissions and Europe is using a lot of coal. Therefore, European emissions will go up. Where is the European instructions, European views? And these views are driven to be wrong as well. Because our numbers show that the European emissions decline is a significant 2.5%. So, dear colleagues, last year, in the middle of the first global energy crisis, Europe being at the epicenter, we have seen that all the efforts from Europe and its partners, we were able to see Russian oil and gas revenues decline, the share of Russian energy in Europe decline, clean energy options increase, and the emissions decrease, and we have not seen a major blackout or heating problems. We did have some bruises, economic and social bruises, that's for sure, but this is far less worse than it was thought before. So therefore, my first point is congratulations to Europe and European institutions, including the Commission and Madam Commissioner here. The second point, dear colleagues, is a warning, as I mentioned to you. Yes, we are, as it seems, we are off the hook, if I may say so, this winter. But another winter is coming, the next winter. And there are three factors that are with us now and that may not be with us next winter. So therefore, I see in some government leaders, when I talk with them, a bit of an overconfidence about the current achievements now, and therefore is my warning. My warning is next winter may be more difficult than this winter for three reasons. Number one, this winter we were lucky to import a lot of LNG from the markets to replace the Russian pipeline gas. And one of the reasons that we were able to import a lot of LNG is China, which is the top LNG importer of the world. Chinese economy was bad. Chinese domestic gas consumption declined for the first time in the year 2022 since 40 years. Therefore, Chinese LNG imports declined significantly. Therefore, there were a lot of LNG in the markets and we could go and buy this LNG. But now, all the indications show that the Chinese economy is rebounding. Therefore, China's LNG import needs will be increasing. Therefore, China is coming to LNG markets as a major, strong buyer with strong financial muscles. This is the first reason of the warning. Second reason, every year certain amount of LNG projects finish and they come to the market, available for the buyers. This year, 2023, the amount of new LNG capacity coming to global markets is one of the lowest in the history. Only slightly higher than 20 BCM, which is very, very low. Therefore, the pool of LNG is rather small for Europe to buy it. This is the second reason why the warning. Third, we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be realistic here that one of the factors helped us this year to go through without major problems is that we had a relatively, in fact more than relatively, a mild winter. Nobody can guarantee that next winter will be as mild as this winter, and if it is in line with the usual temperatures, then this may be a problem. Therefore, it is my warning here, we shouldn't be too relaxed, too overconfident. We should be happy with our achievement, our solidarity, our unity, our pragmatic policies, but get ready for the next winter, which International Energy Agency is again working with the member countries, providing guidance and suggestions to them. This is my second point. And now my third and last point. It is about the European industry. In September last year, I wrote an op-ed by saying that Europe needs to have a new industrial master plan, because there are two major pressure points. Number one, Europe industry is based on a model which is basically getting the rather abundant and cheap Russian energy. This is finished. There is no going back. European energy in the future will be more expensive than this will put a lot of pressure on the competitiveness of the European industries. Energy is a big part of the production cost of steel, aluminium, cars, whatever you, chemicals, whatever you produce. If your energy input is much more expensive than to our competitors, you start from a rather disadvantageous position. We read that the current European energy prices came down compared to 24th of February crisis. This is true, and it's a good news. But dear colleagues, even today's energy prices in Europe are 3 times higher than the historical averages of Europe. 3 times higher. European natural gas prices today, which people say came down, which they did, which is right, is 7 times more expensive than in the United States. So US natural gas is 7 times cheaper than European natural gas prices. Electricity prices, which came down, yes, but they are still 3 times more expensive than the Chinese electricity prices. So therefore we have a fact here, and this will not change broadly. In the future, Europe energy prices will be higher than previous European energy prices and higher significantly than its economic competitors. Therefore, European industry policy needs to change. This is the reason number one why there is a new European industry master plan. Number two, the world is entering a new industrial age, the age of clean energy technology manufacturing. It is the batteries, it is the electric cars, solar panels, windmills, SMRs, and all of them. And who is going to produce this? Currently, there is one country is making a major inroads. It is China. When you look at this chart, you see that China is currently dominating the game. For example, batteries, which is the main component of clean energy in many reasons. 75% of the batteries in the world is today manufactured. And the United States came up with the Inflation Reduction Act to be a part of the new industrial age, clean energy technology manufacturing. And our numbers show that even IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, is fully successful, goes seamless. The 75% of the share of batteries, the China's share of batteries in the world will go down only to 55%. And what about Europe? And I think Europe needs to be also the part of clean energy technology manufacturing, and it is the second reason I believe Europe needs to analyze in the entire supply chain of clean energy where Europe can have a competitive edge and what kind of financial, economic and also energy policies need to be put in place. Otherwise, Europe industry will be first producing not competitive products, produce obsolete products. And it is the reason why we need to see a new European industry master plan in line with the new cost of energy realities and in line with the next chapter of industrial age. If not, and I am finishing here, I believe European economy will get a big hit, and as the industry sector is a major backbone of the European employment, we will see significant employment and social pressures, and a weak European economy and being less competitive in the industry sector would mean the Europe's stature in the international affairs will be diminished. So these are the 3 points I wanted to bring to your attention. The first of all, congratulations of the last year performance, and heads up for the next winter, and a bit at the longer term, the industry competitiveness and the opportunity. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for reminding us some important realities, for telling very clearly what many of us are thinking, that the bad days are not over yet, I hope, but we should prepare maybe for some difficult situation during next winter, and you gave the main reasons. And also, okay, of course, looking to the industrial competitiveness of our industry, an issue very dear to the heart of many colleagues in the committee. I go now to the first round. Please, dear colleagues, and please also dear guests, to respect now the times, because we have a press conference at 12:15, and journalists generally expect us to be on time there, but we have enough time for our dialogue. And I go with the first round, the round of coordinators or representative of the political groups. The first intervention, Mr. Christian Ehler, EPP coordinator.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Commissioner, Mr. Birol, I mean, we had been thoroughly reading what the EA had been publishing, and my first question is from both sides. Do you, Mr. Birol, have the impression that the Commission takes, and the Member States, take the right measures? And the same question goes to the Commissioner. Is the Commission, but also what is the impression by the Commission, are the Member States taking the right measure to consider that gap? Second question, Commissioner, had heard what Mr. Birol is saying on competitiveness. We are discussing now a proposal from the Commission on clean hydrogen. There is nothing mentioned about comparative costs. So have you any idea what are the comparative costs of producing clean hydrogen related to your proposal, given that in terms of the IRA, an investor has a precise idea what are these energy costs, because the Americans are addressing the capex, and they have a precise idea about the costs of hydrogen. So where do you see your proposal? Because it's described by the industry and stakeholders as overcomplicated, over-descriptive, and would lead to much higher comparable cost than clean hydrogen produced in the US. And my last question is a little bit to the market interventions and the dreams here. I mean, we should be grateful that the Commission, like a crab, was going sideward when asked to intervene in gas market prices, because it was, let's say, the way the Council wanted to solve their own problems internally by handing that over to the Commission. But let's have a look. I mean, what in effect happened is that the ECI that operates the TTF market in the Netherlands has set up a virtual trading point in London now, in case the gas price cap is triggered. So I would like to ask you, I mean, how do you see that? I mean, the effect of all that ballyhoo was simply that we are shifting out the trading hubs out of Europe. So what do you expect in terms of potential intervention into the electricity price market? I think the first leak proposals, we see that as fairly positive, but I mean, in relation to what happened on that intervention attitude of the gas market, what do you expect from the electricity market and the results of an intervention from the Commission in this market? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Signora Toia, Vice President of the Committee, on behalf of SD.
Grazie Presidente, un ringraziamento alla Commissaria e al Direttore dell'Agenzia, perché effettivamente l'incontro di oggi ci ha dato moltissimi spunti, moltissime occasioni di riflessione per il nostro lavoro presente e futuro, veramente molto interessante. Certamente possiamo dire, signora Commissaria, che abbiamo saputo affrontare l'emergenza, quello shock terribile provocato dalla guerra che la Russia ha portato in Ucraina, con tutte le conseguenze. Siamo riusciti a superare quel momento terribile coniugando bene, secondo me, gli interventi di emergenza, nello stoccaggio, le prime misure, le misure immediate e nello stesso tempo anche proseguendo la nostra azione, diciamo, di medio e di lungo periodo, di tutto il cambiamento del mix energetico e di tutte le nuove azioni da mettere in campo per le rinnovabili. Adesso che cosa fare? Per non stare seduti sugli allori, perché non possiamo certo permettercelo. Mi chiedo, nell'immediato, riempimenti per il prossimo anno, misure immediate. Signora Commissaria, io penso che il tema dei prezzi che lei ha toccato giustamente per quello che siamo riusciti a fare in passato, oggi diventa ancora centrale. Come fare in modo che le necessità di riempimento, anche magari in vista di un inverno più rigido, non diano luogo per l'eccesso di domanda ad aumenti che non possiamo più permetterci, perché altri dobbiamo calmierare i prezzi. Come li affrontiamo? Acquisti comuni, quali altre azioni? Perché ci sono disparità anche di costi nei vari paesi. Nel mio paese l'energia è molto più alta che in altri e questo danneggia moltissimo non solo l'industria italiana, ma il mercato unico europeo e la sua sopravvivenza. Quindi cosa facciamo nell'immediato, spingendo ancora di più e comprimendo un po' anche la volontà degli Stati membri, che spesso imputano all'Europa molte cose, ma non si mettono attorno al tavolo con vera unità e intenti per creare quella che nella mia testa e nella testa di molti di noi dell'energia. Invece nel periodo medio e lungo come facciamo a incrementare tutte le altre energie del mix? Io penso anch'io che il biometano sia importante, sarà un contributo parziale nel totale dei consumi del fabbisogno, ma abbiamo bisogno di tutto. Io dico che abbiamo bisogno anche dell'idroelettrico, ma non lo tocco qui. Quindi questa iniziativa che lei ha detto per il biometano è un mercato che stenta a crescere. Non so come produrremo la quantità prevista, perché è molto frammentato, piccole realtà hanno bisogno che qualcuno le metta insieme, hanno bisogno di una politica, diciamo, la normativa la stiamo facendo, ma anche di interventi molto diciamo, di politica industriale. E chiudo sulla politica industriale, mettiamoci al fianco di quello che sta facendo Breton e la Commissione, perché un pezzo di quella politica industriale nasce qui nella politica energetica. E io invece li vedo ancora un po' separate. Da un lato la ricerca e l'innovazione, dall'altro l'energia, dall'altro l'industria. Dobbiamo assolutamente assumere una leadership come parte energetica di tutto questo complesso di azioni.
Grazie signora Toia. Au nom du groupe Renew, Monsieur Grudler, s'il vous plaît.
Merci Monsieur le Président, Madame la Commissaire, Monsieur le Directeur exécutif. Au nom du groupe Renew, je vous remercie d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui pour marquer ce triste premier anniversaire de la guerre et pour analyser ensemble notre stratégie énergétique. L'AIE a publié plusieurs rapports, notamment un qui explique qu'en 2022, la demande mondiale en énergie a augmenté d'environ 2% et les émissions de CO2 d'environ 0,9%. Et dans le même temps, l'Union européenne a réduit ses émissions de CO2 de 2,5%. Donc on est plutôt des bons élèves, et je pense que c'est important de le rappeler. Pour l'avenir, tout d'abord, il faut réduire nos importations. Le sujet, c'est pas seulement de remplacer le gaz russe par une dépendance au gaz de schiste américain ou éventuellement chinois. Il faut trouver une manière de produire davantage chez nous. Ensuite, réduire la demande, Madame Simson, vous avez raison, il faut réduire la demande, mais pas au détriment de notre production industrielle. Parce que souvent, il y a un lien entre la consommation d'énergie et la richesse des pays. Donc veillons à cela. Je pense que la communication sur le Net Zero Industry Act de la semaine prochaine peut nous permettre aussi, au nom de cette industrie propre, d'avancer sur des choses positives. Et enfin, le dernier point à soulever, c'est l'autonomie stratégique énergétique de l'Union européenne. On doit produire davantage chez nous, alors pas en redémarrant les centrales à charbon, ça peut être ponctuellement quand on n'a pas d'autre solution, mais surtout à travers les renouvelables. Et je souhaite, comme vous, que les négociations sur RED 3 aboutissent très vite, que les actes de la Ligue soient très vite adoptés pour qu'on puisse démarrer le marché de l'hydrogène notamment. Et puis également le nucléaire, qui est aussi une énergie propre. Et je me réjouis que l'AIE reconnaissent l'importance du nucléaire dans la décarbonation de notre économie mondiale. Alors, M. Birol, êtes-vous d'accord sur le fait que l'Europe doit continuer à travailler sur un cadre réglementaire adapté pour le nucléaire pour renforcer ses capacités existantes tout en soutenant l'innovation, notamment concernant la gestion des déchets? Et Madame Simson, au niveau de cette autonomie énergétique, à quand une alliance européenne pour le nucléaire de demain, notamment sur les petits réacteurs modulaires SMR? Je sais que vous y travaillez, il y a un pré-partnership avec des gens qui vont rendre leurs conclusions au mois d'avril, mais il est temps qu'en 2023, on lance enfin une alliance européenne des SMR.
Merci, Monsieur Grudler. In the name of the Greens, Mr. Dalunde, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the Commissioner and to the Director for attending this meeting and discussing these issues with us. I have a question regarding the balance between the short-term and the long-term perspective on these issues. Because let's remember why we are here. We are here because there was an opportunity for Russia to use energy as a geopolitical weapon and for us to be vulnerable because of it, because we are dependent on fossil fuel. And I think that the image that the Director showed on the relative success that the European Union has had during 2022, why is this? Because we invested a lot in renewables. Otherwise, this had not been possible. And I am worried that many of the proposals on the table right now will to some extent reverse this and make it more difficult, this transition to more inherently cheap sources of energy, namely renewables. If we are using CFDs or if we are dividing the market into several markets where fossil and nuclear has a special price and are given some extra support to be more profitable, that can, of course, make some sense in the very short term to alleviate price, but it also undermines the profitability in investing in new renewables. Over the past few months, I've met with several stakeholders telling me that the mere existence of these proposals dampen the will of investments in new renewables. Only yesterday I met with a renewables company that doesn't dare to invest in renewables because they do not know how profitable they will be, because they see these proposals on the table that might undermine the investments in the kind of energy that will keep us independent for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dalunde. On behalf of ECR, Mr. Tobisowski.
Thank you. I will speak in Polish. Szanowna Pani Komisarz, Szanowny Panie Dyrektorze, Panie Przewodniczący, dziękuję za dzisiejszą debatę, za możliwość wymiany poglądów. Rzeczywiście jest bardzo ważny moment, aby zrobić sobie podsumowanie i ocenić, w jakim jesteśmy miejscu. Ważne, by oprzeć nasze wnioski i prognozy na przyszłość na faktach, na twardych faktach, na twardych liczbach. Stąd dziękuję za głosy mówiące o realistycznym podejściu do sytuacji, w której jesteśmy. I chciałem tylko przypomnieć, że kryzys energetyczny nie rozpoczął się z napaścią, inwazją Rosji na Ukrainę. Przypomnijmy sobie naszą debatę tu na Komisji, na plenarnych posiedzeniach w 2021 roku, kiedy baliśmy się zimy. A więc kryzys rozpoczął się trochę wcześniej, kiedy pandemia połamała łańcuchy dostaw. A więc tu jest początek i tu jest to, co powinniśmy wziąć pod uwagę. Dziękuję serdecznie za to optymistyczne spojrzenie w przyszłość, ale chciałem zapytać Panią Komisarz i Pana Dyrektora, bowiem miałem okazję zapoznać się i moi współpracownicy, eksperci z raportu Międzynarodowej Agencji Energii dotyczącej rynku energii elektrycznej i na stronie 75 raportu, który pojawił się w lutym tego roku, czytamy, iż wytwarzanie energii elektrycznej ze źródeł węglowych w Unii Europejskiej w 2022 roku wzrosło o ponad 6%. Wymieniane kraje, które tam są, które uruchomiły ponownie energię opartą o węgiel, to są między innymi kraje zarządzane przez partię Zielonych, socjalistów, a więc tu pytam o logikę i spójność decyzji krajów ważnych w Unii Europejskiej, jeśli chodzi o inwestycje w sektor energetyki węglowej. I następnie czytamy również na tej 75. stronie, iż emisyjność wzrosła w zeszłym roku, ale w energii elektrycznej o 7% w Unii Europejskiej. Bo tutaj pan dyrektor dobrze i słusznie podał nam dane ogólne, ale wzrosło 7%. A więc jeśli my nałożymy stan faktyczny podany od państwa raportu do sytuacji, w której jesteśmy, do prognozowania na przyszłość, to cieszę się, że pada słowa o realistyczność, ale my musimy w Europie być solidarni. A więc jeśli od jednych krajów, jeśli chodzi o Polskę, wymagamy zamykania elektrowni energetycznych opartych o węgiel, to nie może być, że w innych krajach otwieramy te elektrownie energetyczne na węgiel, bo to się nie trzyma. Dziękuję Panie Przewodniczący i prosiłbym Panią Komisarz, Pana Dyrektora o komentarz. Dziękuję.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tobisowski. The last intervention in the first round, Mr. Botenga, the coordinator of the left.
Merci, Madame la Commissaire, Monsieur le Directeur exécutif. L'éloge de soi-même est un art suprême parfois à la Commission européenne. J'ai l'impression, je pense que ça vaudrait la peine de prendre quelques moments dans une présentation après un an, quelques moments d'autocritique aussi. Parce que tout d'abord, je pense que ce que beaucoup de citoyens se souviennent de cette année, ça a été l'incapacité totale de l'Union européenne de plafonner les prix à un niveau décent pour les consommateurs et les industries. Et nous en payons toujours aujourd'hui les prix à beaucoup de niveaux. En été, Madame van der Leyen, la présidente de la Commission, a eu l'honnêteté d'avouer que le marché avait échoué en plénière. Je pense que c'est le moment de répéter cette déclaration et d'en tirer toutes les conclusions. Parce que vous avez parlé de la dépendance du fossile russe, mais dépendance du fossile en général, mais n'oublions pas que ça aussi, c'est la conséquence d'années de politique où nous avons laissé substantiellement la transition écologique dans les mains des multinationales. Si elles faisaient un petit projet vert, elles recevaient des subsides, mais elles pouvaient aussi avoir des subsides pour des projets d'investissement dans le fossile. Alors, permettez-moi pour l'avenir, Vous avez parlé du GNL, du gaz de schiste, etc. Permettez-moi de vous soumettre une hypothèse sur base notamment des risques identifiés par l'agence énergétique. Si demain, les États-Unis décidaient d'arrêter d'exporter leur GNL tout à fait ou partiellement vers l'Union européenne pour le vendre ailleurs, soit pour faire la pression politique, soit pour des raisons purement économiques, quel serait l'impact sur notre économie? Est-ce que, en d'autres mots, vous nous considérez aujourd'hui otages des États-Unis, otages donc d'un pays étranger avec lesquels nous ne partageons pas toujours les mêmes intérêts? Le même exercice pourrait être fait pour d'autres pays avec lesquels nous allons maintenant remplacer les énergies russes. Je pense au Qatar, l'Arabie Saoudite, l'Azerbaïdjan, voire Israël, qui ne sont pas, comme vous le savez, forcément des gens ou des pays, des régimes avec lesquels nous partageons les mêmes valeurs. Merci bien.
Merci beaucoup. I will kindly invite now first Commissioner Simson and then Executive Director Birol to answer to these questions, but please do it in 5-6 minutes in order to have time for the second round and then for the answers and conclusions. Dear Kadri, please.
I do my best to respect the time limit, but at the same time answer to all the questions. Thank you for very good discussion and comments. I will start with Christian Ehler and the issue of our competitiveness at high prices. First of all, I do believe that the temporary emergency measures that we put in place helped us to achieve the target that we are facing right now, that prices for coal, oil, even oil, gas and electricity are year-on-year basis significantly lower than they were last year. And if that has some impact, then it doesn't mean that we can be complacent, because we cannot continue to pay hundreds of billions of subsidies. And this has been possible also for some temporary measures that allowed member states to reroute the revenues to the consumers. But we need to continue gas diversification efforts and use the joint purchasing to bring down the gas prices. And of course, this has also effect on electricity prices. And third, we need to ensure that our industry and also our SMEs are less exposed to volatility of high prices of the short-term electricity market. And that's why I will propose in the electricity market design measures to facilitate access to long-term instruments, PPAs and CFDs, mainly for new investments in power generation, and this will help customers benefit more directly from lower cost of renewable generation, but this also has its impact to our industry, our clean hydrogen sector. And the last question about TTF market and liquidity. We just received the report from ESMA and Acer that clearly stated that there has not been impact to liquidity in our gas market. Only that allowed us to move further with extending this MCM to also to other hubs. Ms. Toia, I do agree that filling the storage by 95% last November, it was a success, but came at a cost, at a high cost. And this is also one of the reasons why I have organized a special meeting of the Gas Security of Supply Group already in February with all the stakeholders to discuss best practices in filling storage and new ways to ensure that we achieve our target this year at a lower cost. And based on this input, we are publishing soon a report on the implementation of the storage regulation with recommendations and best practices. And of course, I'm happy to discuss it with you. And there is also in parallel ongoing work to replace some of the natural gas with biomethane. We created last year industrial partnership, biomethane industrial partnership, and as I was informing you, the work is ongoing. Mr. Grudler, the technology neutrality and the role of nuclear. Well, I am committed to respect technological neutrality in our proposal, starting from the revision of the electricity market design, where this principle will be reflected. And from my energy portfolio, I want to bring two issues under focus. First, the security of fuel supply for the nuclear industry, because we still do have 5 member states who are dependent on Russian nuclear fuel. And second, promote the competitiveness of the small modular reactors and the emergence of European supply chain there. And we are making progress on the SMR partnership, and I'm happy to keep you informed when dates will be agreed. But we can already see that many member states are taking steps to explore the deployment of SMRs, and this is also work supported by my services. Then our challenges, short-term and long-term. Yes, I do agree that renewables and acceleration of renewables is not anymore only about our climate commitments. It is part of our security supply policies, and from the very beginning this was our growth strategy. So last year we witnessed record volumes of new installed capacity, both solar and wind, and actually yesterday we had a solar power summit here in Brussels, where my Polish colleague, Minister Moskva, was also one of the keynote speakers, because Poland is not only under strong pressure to decarbonize, but they are doing excellently, and this is visible both in renewable side, but also in just transition regions. And of course, right now member states are in the process to upgrade their national energy and climate plans. I do hope that the common targets will help us to achieve higher targets than seemed possible only a couple of years ago. And just to wrap up, I do believe that our electricity market, so far, single integrated electricity market brings major economic and energy security benefits across the EU. But it is also clear that during this energy crisis we have seen some shortcomings, and now with this electricity market reform proposal next week, we do our utmost to bring the benefits of low-cost renewables to all the consumers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Birol, please.
Thank you very much. Also very brief answers. Industrial policy is to have the right industrial policy for the next chapter of the industrial age is, in my view, not only a task for the colleagues who are working on industry. At least there are 4 other areas that needs to be involved in making the Europe's next industrial master plan. One is the energy policy. Second is the trade policy. I think it is time for Europe to show its trade muscles with the international partners. Third is the foreign policy. We have to see with whom we are going to work in terms of the clean energy technologies, being alliances and being much stronger. And fourth is, of course, it is the fiscal policies. I think we need a coordination of these 4 groups working with the industry policy. Now, the last colleague from the left group mentioned something which goes most of the time unnoticed. Renewable companies, like any company, need to make, in fact, profits. And currently, many renewable companies in Europe are not making profits. So whatever the legislation we have should make them to turn them to companies which make profits. Therefore, they can make investments and open employment opportunities. I think this is something that we sometimes forget. We all know that the costs of renewables are going down, but this is not necessarily equal that the renewable companies are making profits. Third point, nuclear. Now, there are many countries in the world. When we look at the IEA, we look at not only Europe, the entire countries. I can tell you something very clearly. Nuclear is making a comeback around the world. Japan, a major nuclear country, changing its policy, restarting its nuclear power plants and thinking of the next wave of nuclear. Korea, exactly the same, changing its policies and coming back to the previous nuclear policies. Go again from Europe, Middle East, India, China, United States. Inflation Reduction Act provides incentives for the lifetime extension of nuclear power plants, existing ones, and also for the SMRs and others, Canada. And in Europe, we all know that there are different views on nuclear, but countries like from Sweden to Netherlands, Netherlands to Poland, France, they all look at nuclear very differently than they were looking at a few years ago. So therefore, it is not an exaggeration to say that nuclear is making a comeback. Now, of course, every country makes its decision by itself, talking with their people, with their industry, and take decisions so. But in my view, if we talk about the very fact that many colleagues mentioned this, European domestic energy production needs to increase, therefore Europe's reliance on the other countries should decrease, and this should be all done in a carbon neutral way. I believe nuclear can emerge as an important option. My last 2 points, Mr. Chairman. It is a bit of a philosophical point, but some countries have mentioned. We are at such a crossroad in terms of energy and climate challenges we have, and both the magnitude of the challenge and the lack of time, in my view, they mean that there is a bigger role for public institutions, governments to play vis-à-vis the markets. Of course, we are market-driven. Markets are the ones, market forces are the ones who make the decisions. But if we are faced such immediate and strategic challenges in front of our nose, both energy security and climate change, which could have geopolitical and humanitarian consequences, there is a stronger role for public institutions being in the driving seat. My last point, the past policies. I believe when this crisis is over, when the dust settles, it will be a time for European countries, at least some European countries, to make a self-critic of their major strategic choice of building an economic model based on importing energy big time from one single country. This is a huge strategic mistake, and many of us are paying it, not only with the electricity and gas bills, but much beyond that. So therefore, it is of course not for now, but when the time comes, we have to make this discussion. International Energy Agency will be following that the discussion takes place, that strategic decisions being reliant on fossil fuels of one single country, one single company, one trade route is very risky. And we have warned this years and years, and it will be the time that we sit down and maybe discuss and make a self-critic and drive the lessons from that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. Very true. I go now to the second round of interventions of 1 minute, please. And I start, of course, with President Jerzy Buzek.
Thank you very much, Chair. Dear Madam Commissioner and Executive Director, it is always a great pleasure to have you at the ITRE committee. A lot of information and great discussion. We survived, as you said, as the European Union this winter. And, of course, our gas storage regulation was very helpful, of course. But now is something worrying, because we are saying that might be worse. Next year, the next year after 2025, so it's going worse and worse. Why? Why we feel that it could be worse? We don't have any energy supply from Russia, and we are ready to stop it forever. So, what is going worse? Probably because we've got a very good Repower EU proposal from the European Commission. Great. But we don't have enough legal framework for that. Biomethane, 35 billion cubic meter in a few years. It will be as a legal obligation. 10 million tons of hydrogen and all the priority corridors for hydrogen should be legal obligation. Madam Commissioner, it is just lying on the table because in our hydrogen gas package in European Parliament, we've got everything written in our regulation. So we need your support, simply speaking.
Thank you,
and
President.
to agree with the Member State that we should have all such, of course, heat pumps should be also added to this tremendous number of improvements. Otherwise, we will be worse and worse and worse, because we assume not any more going back to Russia.
Thank you so much, President.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Mr. Director General, thank you very much for proposal of new point of view for our industrial strategy. It's very important.
Thank you so much. Mr. González Casares, please.
Gracias, presidente. Gracias, comisaria y director Fatih Birol. Es una pena que no haya usted estado antes en la discusión sobre el hidrógeno renovable, porque vería que hay aquí algunos que quieren perseverar en hacer hidrógeno con gas en lugar de promocionar el renovable, que es lo que nos va a dar autonomía y es lo que va a permitir que Europa baje los precios de la energía. Es decir, las renovables son la salida. Usted lo ha dicho. Y si queremos promocionar las renovables, desde luego tenemos que hacer políticas que vayan en esa dirección, no promocionar combustibles fósiles, como algunos aún pretenden, o seguir confiando en, digamos, suppliers que no son realmente fiables. Por lo tanto, creo que ese es un mensaje muy importante. Sigamos por el camino de las renovables, que junto con la diversificación del almacenamiento de gas es lo que nos ha permitido pasar más o menos este invierno. Vamos hacia una reforma del mercado de la energía, comisaria. Yo le preguntaría, necesitamos también esquemas de apoyo para flexibilidad. ¿Está considerando introducir estos mismos en la próxima reforma del mercado? Yo creo que es necesario a medida que incrementamos el mix renovable en nuestro sistema eléctrico. Creemos que este es un buen camino, consideraría.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Wisner, please. Renew.
Thank you so much. It was nice to meet you both yesterday, and it's also very nice to welcome you to ITRE today, both to Ms. Simson and to Mr. Birol. Many of the European countries that are not so reliant on Russian gas have one thing in common, and that's a factor I would like to bring up to the table now, and that's the bioenergy. And especially the case, I think one of the best examples is Lithuania. Thanks to the production of bioenergy, they were able to phase out their dependency on Russian gas long before the war started. And you, Mr. Birol, and the IEA presented a report in March 2022 where you said that Europe could double the energy production from bioenergy and in order to fast phase out the Russian natural gas. Despite so, the Repower EU only mentions bioenergy once. Hydrogen is mentioned over 50 times. So I would like to hear both Mr. Birol, how do you see that the European Union is neglecting your advice on this, not bringing bioenergy into the puzzle of solutions in the Repower EU, and what do you think the EU could do in terms of enhancing and utilizing the potential of the bioenergy policies? And to the Commissioner, Madam Simson, how do you see the red discussions on bioenergy actually risking doing the opposite, lowering the potential of using bioenergy as a part of the solution? And also the court case on biogas. How will we make sure that the court case on lowering the tax on biogas will not hamper the deployment of biomethane within the Repower EU? The court case was only 2 months ago.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Bentele, please. Hildegard, Mrs. Bentele, please.
Okay, thanks. I also want to come back to a suggestion of you which was not yet discussed at all. It's energy efficiency, because this is we are dealing with intensively currently. So you made quite some proposals also beside heat pumps, which is a problem what we heard. But I would like to hear your opinion, what has been done until now, what has been reached also with a view to this maybe more difficult summer, because we should talk about it and put pressure and maybe have your advice on what kind of support we need from governments in this regard. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Paulus, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you both for your inspiring input and your clear words. I would like to briefly focus on 2 points. First, we will enter into the maybe last trilogue on the Energy Efficiency Directive this afternoon, and if the EU continues to neglect this energy efficiency, despite of the new realities that Dr. Birol has just outlined, we will not be able to handle not only the next winter, but also the years ahead. Let's not forget that energy efficiency is the base load of the energy transition. And my question to you, Commissioner, is will you commit to staying strong on the Commission's Repower EU targets this afternoon or this night? Second, the global methane tracker of the IEA produces a number of roughly 5 million tons of methane being emitted in the energy sector of the European Union. But taking a look over our borders, it's at least triple that amount in the MENA region alone. So, Dr. Birol, how would you judge the effect of including imports in the EU legislation on limiting methane emissions in the energy sector? Would that alleviate our situation? And apologies, I have to leave because I have to fulfill my duty as coordinator in the special COVID committee, but I will watch the recording for your answers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Penkova, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be speaking in Bulgarian. Госпожо комисар, господин Бирол, скъпи колеги, в момента се намираме в едно затишие на първоначалния шок на цените на природния газ, прямо това, което изпитахме в началото, но заради начинът на ценообразуване на електроенергията, това шоково постъпване се прехвърли върху цените на сметките ни за ток. Много производства намалиха драстично плановете си за производства и някои от тях дори ги спряха, но по-големият проблем е, че стоките от първа необходимост, като например хранителните стоки в много държави членки поскъпва заради начин на ценообразуване на електроенергията. В момента наблюдаваме забрани за внос на зеленчуци, рестриктивни практики за замразяване и тавани на цените. За страни, в които разходите за храна са основното перо от бюджета на хората, това води до много висока инфлация и до сериозен натиск върху нашите домакинства. Поради тази причина реформата на пазара на електроенергия трябва да се фокусира именно върху първоизточника на ценообразуване. Моят въпрос е в конкретика. Какви конкретни мерки ще предприемете, за да намалите енергийните разходи и инфлацията на домакинствата в Европа? Благодаря ви.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sean Kelly, please, EPP.
Thank you, and thanks to Commissioner and the Director for very interesting messages and presentations. So some questions. One, if China is growing again, is there a likelihood that rather than competing against ourselves and others on the water market, that they will look to Russia to give them the growing need they have for energy? I will be hosting later on today an event on electricity market design reform on behalf of Eurelectric, and that, of course, will have to direct investment into renewables as well as storage technologies and demand-side flexibility. But also I'm interested to ask the Commissioner, where does she see the United Kingdom fitting into our situation now that we've agreed, hopefully, on the Windsor framework and back in good terms again, especially in relation to cross-border electricity trading and the single electricity market in Ireland? And the final question, how will the new legislation aid multi-purpose interconnectors, which are so badly needed? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Mr. Peterson, please. Vice Chair of our Committee, Renew.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Director. I think, Katri, you point out to some of the big and great successes so far. I was especially happy to hear your ambition of prolonging the 15% obligation or savings obligation, at least. I think that is exactly the right tool, one of the many right tools to apply in this situation in order to ensure that we get through next winter as well. So thanks for this. Now, Dr. Birol, I can assure you have many readers in this room of your great publications, and congratulations. We really applaud it. Now, I also wanted to touch upon the energy efficiency issue, because you didn't point to this in your great slides. Two questions, basically. Are we doing enough on energy efficiency? I mean, I know the easy answer is no, obviously not, but could you elaborate a little on this, and what kind of suggestions IEA might have to us on this? Secondly, on the renewables, to consider this in the big picture related to energy security is absolutely right, and on this point as well, are we doing things fast enough? I know the easy answer again here is no. You were pointing out to 41% additions of solar and wind in your slide, but clearly if we are to meet our targets, we have to ramp up much faster than what we are capable of doing. So please, a couple of words on this as well. Thank you so much, and congrats with all your great work. We appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Mr. Geyer, please.
Vielen Dank, Herr Präsident.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Ich habe sehr aufmerksam zugehört, als die Rede davon war, welche Belastungen europäische Industrie. Herr Dr. Birol hat darauf hingewiesen, hinsichtlich der künftigen Energiepreise ausgesetzt sind. Ich bin ein wenig enttäuscht davon, dass bei alledem, was wir lesen über die Kommissionsvorschläge für eine neue Marktordnung für Elektrizität, ein Entgegenkommen für die europäische Industrie hinsichtlich einer Maßnahme, die Stromkosten in diese Richtung zu senken, eigentlich fehlt. Frau Simson, wäre Ihnen für Hinweise dankbar, warum das so ist. Und es gibt Vorschläge zum Beispiel vom Deutschen Institut der Wirtschaft, als Ersatzmaßnahme so etwas vorzusehen wie ein Pool von Contracts of Difference, mit denen die europäische Industrie ausgestattet werden kann, um zu konkurrenzfähigen Strompreisen zu kommen. Das würde ich gerne mal zur Diskussion stellen, und wenn Sie spontan dazu Meinung haben, Herr Dr. Birol, wäre ich für Hinweise dankbar.
On that, I'd appreciate it, Dr. Birol.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Weiss, please.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being with us this morning, Dr. Birol. It's very appreciated how precise you are in your recommendations. Now, I have a question regarding digitalization. In October 2022, the Commission adopted an energy action plan that aims to support development of sustainable, cybersecure and competitive market for digital energy services. Now, I will not ask you if you think that was a timely act. It entails creation of a common European energy data space by 2024. It's about coordination at EU level, and also it points out that investments in digitalization is very key. Now, considering the need and the importance of digitalization in the energy sector to ensure that there are more renewables in the grid and to improve grid flexibility and reliability despite the intermittent nature of renewables, what should be the most important aspects or policy measures that we as policymakers should focus on. What are the 1-2 most important points for us to act upon regarding digitalization and energy when we leave this very, very important meeting? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Kiran Kaff.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Simson and Mr. Birol. I want to talk about the money, and I particularly want to talk about energy efficiency. Deputy Hildegard, Deputy Peterson, both talked about energy efficiency, which always seems to be the bridesmaid but never the bride. It seems to be overlooked. What can we do about this? As the rapporteur on the recast Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, I'm delighted to see the strong interest in buildings, which consume 40% of energy. If we tackle buildings, we're well on our way to reducing energy use and indeed tackling our climate goals. But how can we step up the finance? At a European level, we're talking about a hydrogen bank, which is great, and yes, we need that. But we also need the money for renovations. And thankfully, the European Investment Bank is strongly rebranding as the Climate Bank. The European Central Bank came out in strong support for an Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. But can we do more about releasing the money for renovations and in doing so ensure that energy efficiency makes centre stage? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Berenson, please. EPP.
Thank you very much. As the rapporteur of the European Parliament on the industry strategy, I completely share the call of Mr. Birol on what is needed for industry and for our competitiveness. Competitiveness has been an issue raised by the EPP continuously over the last years. And indeed, the energy price is one of the main aspects for our industry to be competitive in the coming years as well. And therefore, I really hope that next week and in the coming weeks when the proposals of the Commission are presented, that we somehow see something of also a 10E on steroids, because I think we need cross-border projects, cross-border infrastructure to tackle the energy transition and the energy prices together in Europe. I have a very concrete question to Mr. Birol. In your report of the IEA of December, you mentioned that the EU's potential gas supply-demand gap could reach 27 billion cubic meters in 2023, and I'm wondering where we are now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Heisel, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Dear Commissioner, I would like to ask you, we really managed to secure enough of energy sources for this winter, but because we were helped also by the weather, as it was said, also by the absence of the China on the LNG market. And it's also positive that Europe will end with relatively large stocks this winter. It's okay, yeah, but do you expect that the storages will be filled to the level about the 90% also by this November? Without major problems. I mean, taking into account that also for the last year we fill the storage also by the Russian gas. My second question is one of the possibilities, which is really not popular because we are dealing with a Green Deal, is to increase our resilience of the EU in case of the oil and gas supplies rely on our own reserves. It means exploration and eventual extraction of the deposits that we have in Europe. What is your view on this? For example, account the Netherlands and what was happening in Netherlands, and do you see it also as an opportunity to strengthen energy security? Because despite the obvious trends of the decarbonization, we will need these fuels for, I don't know, maybe 10 years at least. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Heisel. Mrs. Cornelia Ernst, the Greens.
Ja, vielen Dank an Frau Simpson und Herrn Birol. Ich möchte
einfach einen anderen Aspekt noch mal mit einbringen, der hier noch keine Rolle gespielt hat. Wir sagen, ja, wir wollen von russischen Energieimporten wollen wir unabhängig werden, das ist okay. Trotzdem brauchen wir Erdgas. Und da haben wir bisher über Norwegen gesprochen, aber es gibt auch Länder des globalen Südens, in die jetzt ein Run beginnt, beispielsweise in Afrika, wie in Senegal zum Beispiel, wo es massive Investitionen in völlig neue fossile Infrastrukturen geht. Und es geht ja auch darum, über die Klimaziele zu sprechen und diese Lock-in-Effekte möglichst doch zu vermeiden. Und deswegen sind meine Fragen ziemlich konkret. Welche Länder des globalen Südens sehen Sie denn jetzt im Kommen? Und wenn Sie auf die letzten 12 Monate schauen, welche sind denn zu den bedeutendsten Lieferanten von Erdgas aufgestiegen? Dann wie schätzen Sie denn beispielsweise die energiepolitische Rolle künftig von Senegal ein, solchen Ländern oder auch anderen? Und welche Kenntnisse haben Sie über negative Folgen, nämlich Umweltfolgen, die daraus entstehen können?
Mrs. Tiziana Begin, please.
Thank you, Chair. I switch to Italian. Grazie commissaria, grazie al dottor Birol per questa interessante presentazione. Io credo che siano stati coperti tutti i temi, però sottolineerei, come hanno fatto anche altri colleghi, la questione legata alla parte finanziaria della transizione e di tutti i progetti energetici. Io credo che sicuramente la rapida adozione di REPowerEU e tutte le manovre che sono state fatte quest'anno ci abbiano insegnato che possiamo rispondere a uno shock come quello energetico solo in modo unitario, lo stesso modo che avevamo fatto per lo shock portato dalla pandemia, ma ancora troppa reticenza rispetto a un new next generation, a un reale finanziamento della transizione, laddove in realtà altri player importanti come gli Stati Uniti mostrano invece abbastanza forza. L'IRA è uno schiaffo che ci ha svegliato e ci mostra che non è possibile procedere in Europa come stiamo facendo in modo così diverso. La discussione sugli aiuti di Stato non è sufficiente, vediamo ancora tutti andare in ordine sparso e il nostro mercato unico rischia. Le preoccupazioni sono tante, sono state confermate. Quindi attendiamo con ansia la proposta sulla riforma del mercato elettrico, però ricordo che già oggi in questo momento noi abbiamo aziende strategiche importanti che chiudono perché non sono sostenibili i costi triplicati dell'energia.
Mrs. Spiraki, please, it's your turn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner and Dr. Birol, for being here with us. And it is important to have the details from the horse's mouth, but I would like to stick on the early warning coming from Mr. Birol, particularly not only on the issue that the next window will be much more difficult than the current one, but also on the issue that it is we have to look for solutions that they are combining the addressing of the challenges of climate change and also the energy security issues. In this regard, I would like to focus on the issue of the green hydrogen and the recent developments we have here in the EU concerning the legislation. Madam Commissioner, my question is this. A lot of concerns are coming from the industry regarding the two delegated acts that they are drafted and are in place this period. And I would like to ask you if you are going to proceed with clarifications in order to address the concerns coming from the industry. At the same time, it is also important to ask Mr. Birol if he has some kind of specific suggestions in order to have a fast-track development deployment of green hydrogen deployments in order to increase the security of supply.
Thank you so much. Mr. Fuchslang, our rapporteur for energy efficiency.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Simson and Mr. Birol, for your analysis. I am the rapporteur of the Energy Efficiency Directive, which we will be negotiating later today with the Commissioner and the Council. And we are struggling here in the European Parliament to keep a high level of ambition. We know that from the analysis of the Commission that 1/3 of the natural gas savings from the Fit for 55 package will have to come from the energy efficiency directive. And that is why we want a high target, and we think that the Repower EU proposal from the Commission is a good one. So I'd like to ask Mr. Fatih Birol on how you see the role for energy efficiency in the analysis that you presented to begin with. If we are to meet these challenges of which you speak, how important will energy efficiency be, and what will your advice to us be in relation to this area, energy efficiency? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Last intervention, Mr. Bloss, please. I think he needed to leave. Then many questions, also suggestions. I kindly invite you now to answer to this, and then, of course, Mr. Birol. Please, Commissioner Simson.
Thank you, and I very much enjoyed our open exchange of views today. As you know, Parliament has invited me to be in front of plenary next Tuesday on topic how we can ensure security in the EU, energy security in the EU this year. So I will try to be very brief so that Dr. Birol will have more time, because we will enjoy an hour on Tuesday. But I will start with Professor Buzek's question, why we are worried about this winter. This is very simple. Russia still delivered 60 billion cubic meters of gas via pipeline last year to Europe. The rest that they didn't deliver anymore, they were not able to sell to alternative markets because they don't have alternative pipeline network. That means that was lost to global markets. And as I mentioned, there is 60 more to lose. We were able to replace partially this with LNG, but LNG market this year will be significantly more competitive because due to the demand from Asia. So we know that we have to replace the remaining gas with renewables, and we have to prioritize savings. So I assure you, energy efficiency is a top priority of ours. Without savings, without prolonging also our temporary measures to cut gas consumption, but also to prioritize these efforts that member states made to cut electricity peak hour consumption, we will be in more difficult situation. And that, of course, means that you can expect that we will address all the remaining bottlenecks, so not any more permitting, that we have addressed. But we have lack of skilled workforce, supply chain for some renewable sectors are too long, and of course, grids. Well, you can shorten the permitting, but if our grids are not able to connect all those installations, we are missing the target. And as I mentioned, some of these we will address next week in our Net Zero Industrial Act. And from my side, in the longer perspective this year, I want to propose also industrial partnership to work on skills and to push the new eco-design and energy labelling of cooling and heating appliances so that we can replace in building sector fossil fuels with heat pumps. And then, of course, we are very dependent on our trusted partners. There was a question about our cooperation with UK. You have praised a lot our partners from Norway and Azerbaijan and Algeria and United States. But, of course, UK is also a like-minded partner who accelerates offshore wind and has delivered some very necessary gas in previous year. And I hope that our cooperation is now on a steady base. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Not tomorrow, this evening and next week.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Please, Mr. Birol, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, first of all, I think it is the last round we are talking. It's the first time I came to this committee in person. I can tell I am very impressed with the questions and very surprised with the fact that many of you read our reports. I am really honored for that, and I will tell my colleagues when I go back to Paris. And in response, Mr. Chairman, may I offer the members of this Parliament, when they were to come to Paris, I have a wonderful office with the Eiffel Tower view and very nice coffee machine, to invite you to come to my office and have a discussion on these issues more in depth. And thank you very much for your interest once again.
Invitation accepted, and thank you for this.
Thank you very much. But please, one by one, so not all of you at the same time, so I have a small office. Thank you very much, much appreciated. So, Mr. Chairman, first of all, Mr. Buzek said, why don't we stop completely next year? We have to think of 2017, 2019, 2030, that the reliance on the Russian gas or other countries' gas. Now, the energy sector is a very particular sector. It is not like the IT sector. If you don't like your iPhone, you can change it immediately. But energy sector is bound with a huge infrastructure and consuming equipments. It is like not like a bicycle, it's like a big tanker, and you change the route very, very slowly, unfortunately. Therefore, as I tried to say, we made a huge mistake in Europe by having an over-reliance on one country's fossil fuel exports. It is, in my view, we said several times to those countries, to put all the eggs in one basket was a strategic mistake, and in my view, I am an energy person, not only an energy mistake, but it's a foreign policy mistake and a geopolitical mistake. So therefore, it will take some time. We are going in the right direction. We can definitely accelerate this, and we can definitely learn from this lesson. And the now steps we take should be based on these lessons. One of them is the questions one of the colleagues asked, from which countries we can get new gas imports. Now, there is a lot of discussion at the IEA. We know all the countries, how much each country has gas reserves, how much they can export, and what does it cost. But I think as Europe, we have to be very careful, because we have an energy security problem now, but we have another challenge, which is the climate change. We shouldn't forget, and we should be proud that Europe was the champion years and years of fighting against climate change. We shouldn't leave it to the other countries. So therefore, when I look at the numbers, before the invasion, European gas consumption was in a decline already. It was declining. Now, the gas we are going to find should be the one that will replace the Russian gas we would need. And in that respect, since the European economy should not be relying disproportionately on gas, the gas contracts we are going to make, country X, Y, or Z, I hope it will be diverse, should be as much as possible short-term contracts, and the projects we are making to import that gas, transport that gas, should be designed in a way that can be repurposed to use hydrogen in the future. So these are the two things that I would like to bring to your attention. Right countries, flexible and not long-term contracts as much as possible, and also design the infrastructure accordingly that they can be repurposed. Mr. Chairman, one other issue, I am so happy to hear that many colleagues mentioned energy efficiency. In Europe, every country has an energy potential. Some countries have oil, some have gas, some have huge in the world, some have coal, some have hydropower. But all the countries have one energy source potential, which is energy efficiency. And in Europe, we got it. We did a good job up to now, but there is a huge potential to improve it, which means that, as one of the colleagues put very eloquently, it is the base load of our energy system. How do we do it? There are two ways. One, providing incentive for the consumers to do it. In terms of consumers, what kind of incentives? More financial incentives. In terms of buildings, for example, one of the colleagues mentioned the buildings. Today in Europe, we have a very old building stock, and we are renovating only 1% of our buildings each year. To be in line with our climate targets in Europe, Fit for 55, it should be 3 times higher, the renovation in the buildings. So one area is providing incentive for efficiency, and the other one is, in line with what I said in the previous round, the public sector being in the driving seat a bit more than in the past, regulations, standards and norms, they should be stricter and stricter in my view. And there are long-term standards, norms of regulations, and as Madam Commissioner said, for the next year, having the 15% clause is a good one. Methane. So when we talk about climate change, we talk all the time on carbon dioxide emissions. But there is another one which is a bit more under the shadow of CO2, carbon dioxide, but it is even more dangerous because in the short term it is creating a lot of problem for us. But the good news is reducing methane emissions is much easier and much less costly. 75% of the global methane emissions in the world today can be minimized and nullified at no cost. At no cost if you take the right measures, because it is basically fixing the pipes that methane doesn't leak, gas doesn't leak. I just make it too extreme, but just to make it that you don't need a big technology, you don't need to discover anything, you just need the oil and gas industry not to be greedy, but to make the investments in order to make the necessary, take the necessary steps. So therefore, it is the EU's position in terms of the gas imports, putting the methane emission as an important item is, in my view, very good. And in my view, there may be even room for making them even stricter. So methane, please, let's keep an eye on that. Again, the question, what can we do more in renewables? We can do many things, but if you give me the right to ask for one thing only. You know why we had a big increase last year? Because of the following. Many countries were in a problem. How can we bring energy? So therefore, they did something that they didn't do long times. They have cut the permitting and licensing time. So this is it creates a lot of problem that a lot of projects are in the bureaucratic phases of getting the licensing from permitting from the authorities. Governments need to do one small thing. Increase the workforce in the permitting and licensing bureaus, offices, and make it much more nimble. So this is if you ask me one thing, I am a pragmatic man. This is when I talk with the companies, of course every company, when I talk to business, they always are tax incentive, this and that, but the main issue is today, the fault line is permitting and licensing takes a lot of time in Europe. Please, 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 shorten it as much as possible. If it is one thing, I would like to mention that. Two last points, Mr. Chairman. I know that you want me to finish, but
the journalists, yes.
Two last points. In my view, bioenergy is the blind spot of the European energy debate in general, with the NGOs, with everything together. We have a lot of potential there in terms of bioenergy. If we play our cards well, we can make a significant amount of contribution. I have to just say it and stop it here. Especially in some countries, it can make a substantial contribution if we play our cards right. Last 2 points, I'm sorry. One in the grids and digitalization, the other one is on hydrogen. Now, dear colleagues, just let me tell you one thing, very helicopter view. We have oil, gas, renewables, this and that, hydrogen. But when I look at the global energy picture, where it came, and talking with the investors, companies, where it will go, governments, I can tell you something very simple. The future is electric. The global energy system will be more and more electric. It is under transportation, our mobility system, how we at home, how we use energy for heating, for everything. Our industry sector, the trend is on the electricity side. Electricity will be very important in our lives. Less fossil fuels, oil, gas, coal, less molecules and more electricity. Now here, what is important, We all want to see new power plants, solar and wind, some of us nuclear, some of us this. But the veins, if you think of the body, human body, the veins is the grids. How strong, how well designed, how modern and how flexible our grids are. And what makes our grids more smart, much efficient, and much better in terms of the electricity movement is the digitalization. So the right digital policy married with the right clean energy policy is the formula for the success for Europe and elsewhere. For hydrogen, in fact, when you look at Europe, there is one lesson we have to learn, and I have to mention this, Mr. Chairman. We all talk about solar energy, and I show you a chart that today China produces about 90% of solar panels in the world. But 20 years ago, the picture was very different. It was Germany, it was Spain, it was Italy started the solar, put a lot of subsidies, but after a few years, they dropped the ball and China continued. And today China is leader. A clean energy technology is like running a marathon. Okay, 42 kilometers. Europe ran the marathon, first 10 kilometers in the front, but then slowed down, get tired, thought of something else, and China came and passed Europe and became #1. Nobody gives a gold medal in the marathon who finishes the 10 kilometers as the first. If you want to get the gold medal, you have to finish the 42 kilometers first, which means the policies, right policies put in place and giving a confidence to the investors. And it is the reason I am saying that for the hydrogen, for the electrolyzers, we have to give a visibility to the investors, financial visibility. This is the only thing I would like to say in terms of hydrogen, but we should be aware that today, in terms of cost competitiveness, Europe is not the very best place. We have to improve that. And second, maybe last warning, please, please, hydrogen, not today and even not tomorrow, will be solve of our problems, maybe the day after tomorrow. So please do not expect that the hydrogen will solve all of our problems from one day to another. It will grow. It will, with the increasing demand, giving them incentives, but to have a fixation that the hydrogen will solve our problems in the short or even the medium term would be taking our attention from the solutions that we have under our hands now and lose some perhaps time and attention. Just wanted a friendly warning here, Mr. Chairman. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much. It was really a very interesting meeting, a privilege to have Commissioner Kadri Simson, Executive Director Birol, together with us today. With this, I formally close the meeting. See you next time. Thank you very much, colleagues. We run to the press conference. Thank you.